What happens when you combine this and this? Well, you just create one of the best soundtracks for a video game. And I'm about to tell you why. Hey guys, Mouse here. So in this video I want to share my thoughts about a theme of a game soundtrack that I've been listening lately. If you haven't ever heard about the Ori franchise, it's basically a platforming game of the Metroidvania genre, with astonishing 2D graphics that makes you think you're playing a 3D game from a 2D perspective, and a beautiful epic story. Then if this kind of genre suits you, then it's a must-play game. So I'm here to talk about a particular thing that, in my opinion, is arguably one of the best themes ever made for a game soundtrack. Like heck, that's why I'm calling it a masterpiece in the first place. Shriek and Ori, from Ori and the Will of the Wisps, as a sequel of the first game, Ori and the Blind Forest. I'm clarifying from this moment that there will be spoilers of the story, so if you haven't played it yet and you want to give it a try, unless you're okay with spoilers, then keep watching this video. Before going into the theme itself, you must know who Shriek is and a little bit of the game's background to understand my point. So, Shriek's background is a sad story. In this universe, each one of the forests needs a spiritual tree to keep each element running without any issues. If this tree dies, the forest loses its balance, causing each element to fail at running or simply stop working, leading to the creatures living in the forest facing death or corruption. She was born as a product of a forest, fall and corruption. Even though she was harmless, she grew being the odd one. Well, I mean, look at this thing. She never got a chance to make a single friend or family. She grew up being hated and outcasted by those who thought that she would mean a threat to the already fallen forest, leading her to a lost life, growing up with anger and hatred. Time went on, and by the moment Ori, our protagonist, first encounters her, she had already claimed the throne of the fallen forest of Niwen, and it's up to Ori to restore it, while Ori's main mission was to recover its lost friend Ku. Ori and Ku, now together again, had the mission to look for a way back home, but they simply have it impossible, since Shriek was nearby and she was looking for any single movement for her to attack. Not much time after that, she finds Ori and Ku, and first starts attacking Ori to death. Ku tries to defend her friend, but without any success, Shriek changes her target to Ku instead, leading to her fatal death. It's up to Ori now to save the forest and look for a way to save its friend. The rest of the game now turns to chase between Shriek and Ori, while Ori looks for the resting Wisps to restore the dying tree I told you a bit ago. The whole Ori franchise has always been accompanied with a delightful, epic, melodical themed orchestral music. This music genre perfectly suits the whole environment of the game, along with its story's development and character actions. Shriek and Ori is one of the last theme tracks to be played in the game, and it represents the last boss from the game. It has every instrument a good orchestra has: strings, woodwinds, brass, keyboards, percussions, and even chords. This theme represents the final will of these two characters, Shriek into stopping Ori and Seer, the Wisp now combining together, from dividing the tree at all cost, and for Ori to revive the tree and get a revenge for his fallen friend. Now, each boss in Ori and the Will of the Wisps consists on two phases. Obviously, the second tends to be harder than the previous one. with a transition mini-phase from one stage to the next one, but there's a special thing to keep an eye on. Each phase has a different tone and vibe, but still into the same leitmotif, representing a different context of the fight, while still reminding you that you're still fighting the same boss. Now, with the whole context and knowing the reasons why our characters are doing what they're doing, this is the part where the theme takes a major role, if not the highest role for a soundtrack in the game. First phase of the theme represents the first stage of the battle, and it starts right off with a mid-fast pace that rapidly gives you an alert sensation. And in a gameplay perspective, you already have all the abilities and powers, and you should already know how to use them. It's the ultimate test for you and for Ori. You tried your best to dodge all her attacks, but she's simply too powerful. This is a character you never faced before, and even with all your powers you still struggle to survive her grab. Even though her attacks are slow and quite easily predictable, a single mistake can end up in a bad result. The theme is composed by two other different themes, Shriek's theme and Ori's theme. Ori's theme is the one that us players were listening to since the first game of the franchise. If you play both games, you will realize the leitmotif of this theme appears a lot of times throughout both games' story. Ori's leitmotif can simply be put into any context of the game and still sound good. Shriek and Ori's theme manages to combine these two different melodies from two different contexts into one that not only suits perfectly with the fight, but also what it represents in the lore, and it simply achieves to immerse you into it, making it a theme of its own. By the moment you finish the first stage, you're pretty much tired and looking for a way to catch a break and heal yourself. Shriek is beating you and you can get into the pace of her attacks. You spend pretty much of the transition from the first stage to the next one trying to run away from her attacks, but she just won't let you go, and the theme track shines on letting you know that. See, the whole thing magnificently represents the same fight between you and Shriek in a musical perspective, by putting their respective themes to battle as well. First stage and the first phase of the theme is completely owned by her dominance. By the moment the second and third stage of the fight starts, the theme moves into the second and its final phase. As the second stage approaches, you can realize that Ori's theme slowly makes it into the scene. The now weakened and fleeing Ori still tries to get its feet into the ground and give everything it's got. Now that Ori's theme just makes a brief appearance into the theme, but quickly vanishes when the boss attacks you again. That's when you realize, by listening, that Shriek's theme makes a comeback into the overall battle theme. Second stage is way harder than the first, and it requires you to give even more attention at the first stage and the escape section. Contrary to the first stage, there are few visuals and indicators where to Shriek will attack. If you don't put enough attention, you can easily be defeated. Still, your only source of protection is the healing ability. With enough time, you can regain your health bar to max, though the attacks are harder to detect but still dodgeable, somehow. But by when the third stage starts, none of your learning from the previous stages will help at all, since it decreases the difficulty radically. The ground gets destroyed, and the only way for you to survive is using the bash ability. Then lets you bash into any source of light, while making damage to Shriek when you have even the chance to do so. So this is the part where the game demands your full attention, because all her attacks from the second stage goes to max speed and it becomes almost impossible to detect and dodge. You can realize that Ori is fighting with all of its effort, trying all it can to survive and to fight Shriek. And this is where the theme shines the most. Just as the game itself is cheering for Ori and yelling it not to give up. It's just like, watching the protagonist of an anime to get its full power by getting flashbacks of everything he or her is fighting for. And that's where Ori's theme not only makes a full comeback, but also makes a predominance into the battle and into the theme. You can have sympathy for the villain, to understand why is she like that, to question her beliefs and even get on her side. The fact here is that through this theme soundtrack, you can feel both characters' reasons to fight, giving everything until the end. And even though you can listen Shriek's theme trying to regain the dominance, it's all in vain. And that's the moment when Shriek needs defeat. I won't tell the ending, but just to say that Shriek ends up losing against Ori. The theme Shriek and Ori is a one of a kind. There are few to no games to tell a story through a theme, and even less to execute it perfectly as Ori and the Will of the Wisp did. The combination of Shriek's and Ori's theme makes a totally new theme that you can feel while playing. And that's why I think that Shriek and Ori is a masterpiece of a soundtrack. So, thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next video.